It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that you started out wanting to be a painter and you started out wanting to be a writer?
Well,
that's the thing I've learned.
I actually started out wanting to be a painter who wrote a book. Small book. And I was saying to Fred that I always thought that if I could only come up with a great first line of a book, then the rest would flow. So all these years, I've been thinking of first line. And a lot of times other people just say it better than you.
I have one for you. Call me Ross.
There you go.
No, I don't know if that would work.
Both of these books, and also Ross, your work is very much concerned with beauty and what would be the right word? Transient nature of beauty, but also very much about death. I mean, and some of your most beautiful paintings are very much about death as well. Those two things are very, very linked, both in your work, Fred, and in your work, Ross. You want to talk about that at all? Something you can talk about in any kind of way?
I guess again, it's like you know, I think that you work and the creative process kind of as much as it has its own method, and you have to have a certain concentration and ability to be able to continue that concentration. It's kind of self-perpetuating. There are things that always interfere, and I found that most of them, the things that interfere, have to do with the things that make us feel most fragile. Like suddenly there will be a rupture in our consciousness, whether it's fear of, even today, like thinking about going to my studio in the morning, I look at the paper and those headlines about the nuclear reactor melting down, to try to get to your studio and to process that and go back to your work. It's almost like there's always that interplay between the things we're most vulnerable to, and that, to me, is about the fragility and how things turn on a dime, which is our mortality, essentially.
I know you're a fan of Roland Barthes, and he has, I can't get the quote exactly right, but he talks about the futility of making literature and making art in the face of, the world.
But isn't that what all artists really talk about, whether they express it, articulate it or not? It's like, I forget who said it, I think it was, I can't go on, Beckett, I can't go on, I won't go on, I'll go on. So I think that kind of sums that up, I can't, I won't, I will.
And yet, there, in both these books, there is the tendency toward, it's more than just about beauty or both about death. It's about, they're really pretty affirmative books, affirming life. Just the idea that they're also, in a way, kind of oblique autobiography is an affirmation in itself, isn't it?
I'm not sure if it's an affirmation of life or is a cry that I'm still alive. In one of the stories, the narrator has different guises. Sometimes he's an art critic, a kind of venal art critic, and sometimes he's an artist, but not a grand artist. He's a half-baked artist. He's a kind of artist who makes corny seascapes and lighthouses and stuff that sells, and he's very demented about, not demented, he's very tortured that he can't be a better artist, but he knows it, and that's what he can do, so he's accepted it. I don't know where I'm getting on this, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yes, it's not only about beauty and death, although they're so interwoven for me, because I'm at a point in life when I look at things that are beautiful, I think of their perishability. I can't help it, I see the dialectic of it. But in that story, a particular story about the art critic, he starts to dwell on things he'll miss when he dies. What will he be missing? And then he starts to make an inventory of the missing. And I think that's the feeling I think I have somehow. I look around and I think, God, I love this guy, but then I won't see it again. And I love this person, I won't see her again. And it becomes a very long list of what you won't see.
I feel that.
And of what you love.
And what you love, and how much, how beautiful it is to be alive, and so grateful to be alive every second that you're healthy. And it's just all that stuff.
Sometimes, but I feel the opposite.
Well, did you have that at 21? Or at 21, I wanted to
No,
do
sometimes I think, I have to go to the dentist. Oh, I only have to go to the dentist 25 more times.
But in your book, Ross, there's a wheel somewhere which breaks down, a clipping of a wheel that breaks down the ages of man, and one is regret, right? I think they're broken down very specifically, like 51 to 62 is the age of regret, which I agree with. Yeah. But I wondered if you had. I have plenty of more questions, but I wondered if you had questions of one another that you wanted to ask.
Well, may I?
Of course.
That $100 I lent you last Sunday. No, I do have. I don't know why I'm joking around with you, but I think I still want the 100. I wanted to ask you because you started mentioning, you said coffee. You're doing another book. Oh, a lot of things to say. First of all, you published this book, right? So you put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. You put your money where your taste is. That's very rare. You believed in yourself enough to do it.
Well, it's not even that I believed in myself enough. It's that I didn't know how to do it. I mean, what am I going to do? Go to an agent, a publisher? I don't know. I have no clue where to take it.
Right. But
you have a book.
But let me tell you, the great thing about it for everyone is this: that because he did it himself, he designed it, chose the paper, everything is him. So it's an autobiography in every sense. It's not just that the texts are what he chose. Everything has been chosen by, and it's really beautiful. And there are only 500 copies. It's just a rare item, which will be happy.
I wanted to be on the internet and go viral,
Yeah,
and then I reprinted.
Yeah. I'm talking about him as a sort of refined, as Steve, and he's thinking of himself as Stephen King. I know. It's very comical. But I think, could you say one about the new book, the one you want to do?
Yeah, no, it's called Our Lives in the New York Times. That is a broader spectrum of not about my personal thing, but it has to do with photographs and photojournalism and irony and tragedy and the international disasters of the day juxtaposed with the Tiffany ad, which is always on the same page, same place. And so I just took all these, I mean, I've been doing it for years. It's like my collection of the juxtaposition is, when you look at it over a period of time, it's, I don't know if it's humorous, but it's certainly ironic. And I mean, for instance, I don't know the photojournalist's name again, but he did win a Pulitzer Prize, and actually he killed himself after the picture. It was a picture of an African child. This is like in 1993, I think. Picture of an African child starving to death with a, what's the bird that eats?
Vulture.
Vulture in the corner, waiting. And in the Tiffany ad, there's a little silver elephant directed in the same way that they don't know us, for $10,000, looking, so you get the vulture, the kid, and the elephant.
Oh, wow.
So I just all pages like that I took kind of like the most blatant juxtapositions that I didn't put together that just happened to be there. Of, you know, the things, what I think, the things that the contradictions that we live with in our lives and that we see every day, but nevertheless, we live our lives because we have no other choice. Do we?
Well, you know, I was thinking years ago, Groucho Marx, when he was very, 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 very old, really old. And he was interviewed by the very, 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 very young, I can't remember his name. That's how old I'm getting. It'll come back to me. He was a young interviewer. He had eventually a show. He played a doctor. He's an African American. He played a doctor with his family. You know what I mean? Such a famous show.
Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby. He was a host of a talk program for a while. Yeah, but he was like a kid, like a baby. And there was Groucho Marx, feeling very, you see, he was totally uncomfortable. You're thinking, he probably was thinking, why am I here? How did I get here? Who is this guy? He actually was, he's wearing like a coat and his beret. Must have been chilled. and Cosby was desperately trying to make some conversation with him, trying to connect to him. And it was getting worse and worse because Groucho Marx was not sort of cooperating. And he was, yeah, no. And finally, Cosby said to him, Groucho, are you afraid of death? And Groucho looked at him and says, why no? Sometimes I positively welcome it. So I guess that's my, I don't know what you asked me, but it wasn't about tonight. Tonight I'm not positively. There's no more Maybe we should open for that.
Yeah. I'm sure that people in the audience also have questions. So maybe we'll open it up for a conversation with some people in the audience. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
Hello.
Hello.
I wanted to ask, do you consider your New York Times book to be an artist book? Because from the way I haven't seen it, of course, but from the way you're describing the new one and also the one that's now published, it just seems like that to me. And as a person who makes artist books, I guess I'm a booster of that as an art form.
No, I understand, but I actually don't understand what that precisely means. When you make a book and you're an artist, is that in and of itself mean it's an artist book? I mean, in that sense, sure, it's an artist book.
No, well, right. An artist book is a book that's made as a work of art. So I guess in a sense, you make other things as works of art, and you made that as a work of literature. But something that you designed it, you chose the paper, you produced it.
I understand, but I'm sure he had an input into this book, and this is a work of art. I mean, and he's a writer.
Also, if this is
So it's an artist. Right.
I think what she means is the kind of, I think I understand, he's being perverse, because I think the question really has to do with
distribution.
Distribution, but also the work as artifact, where the book itself is the work of art. That's what I think you also mean. Where that artist's hand is on the book and it's created for a certain kind of art audience. I think that has implications of that artist's book, doesn't it? No?
Right. I mean, I feel like this may be the wrong place to have a whole discussion about it. It's just, I guess, I teach classes in artist books and show people how to make them and things. But sometimes I'll pick up on something that maybe wasn't intended to be that and consider it that. But I mean, the design is part of it. But just in choosing the paper and controlling the production, it seems like it could in some way fit that category. But
I would like it to flow the other way around.
Exactly. Thank you.
I mean, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that I would want it to be an artist book that doesn't become an artist book, as opposed to, what she said would be.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. He doesn't want to be, not to have it boxed in. So already a priori has a certain kind of limited audience and the rest of it. That's why when I said earlier was that I thought that if he had been a literary figure, then the book would be taken in the context of a literary work, and it would have a different kind of audience, really.
Yeah, but that does kind of engender a larger discussion of modernism, postmodernism, and the breaking down of categories and distinctions, right. And what's what and how things operate in the world vis-a-vis, audience, distribution, content, intention.
Intent too, because by her definition, an artist makes a book that is also an artifact in which they pick the paper, they pick the organization of things, etc., etc. They control the production of it. That's an artist's book. an artist book or artifact that they sell in a limited edition for not $25, by the way, probably. But it has to do, I guess, with the attention
More or
of
less.
More. But it has to do with the intention, your intention, right? Your intention was not to do that. Your intention was to make a book, to
Right.
make something
As an
else.
yeah. I mean, as an artist book, but, you know, hopefully that, I mean, even as an artist, I mean, what's your intention? I mean, you know, I always loved what Barnett Newman said about being an artist, that his intention was to hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Wow, what a homey metaphor. Such a recondite artist, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Any,
Other questions? Yeah, in the back. Fine.
Hey, I would love to hear a little bit more conversation about how you make that transition from reading the newspaper when something desperately wrong is happening to going to the studio. You know, I can understand it if one is working on a political piece that where you're going to be, you know, channeling what you've just read. But I guess as a writer myself, it always feels very solipsistic to say, okay, you know, I mean, I have to continue the project I'm working on, and yet I'd love to hear more from you about how do you make that transition, because I find it difficult.
Well, you know, I think that we all have to make that transition no matter what you do. I mean, people go to work, you know, you get up and you live your life and you go to work. I mean, whether, you know, there's an invasion somewhere or a meltdown somewhere, you know, and you know, I guess the best case scenario is that, you know, like Fred said, you know, you kind of bring a humanity into your work that's filtered through all that so that, you know, you don't lose the sense of hopefulness. And I think that to be able to bring that into your working process and kind of, it's a kind of a transformation, really, that you still, everybody really still has their job to do. And in a way, that's the best way to deal with all that, you know, is to, you know, kind of stick to what you know best and where hopefully you can be most effective.
Sometimes, Ross, though your work, especially during the AIDS crisis, was very, very much about that, imbued with it as a conscious choice to make work about that. And that's not, and you're always making work about things, but at that time in your career it was very much about that, yeah?
Sure, because it's almost like I was saying before, they're just events in the world that are like fissures, like ruptures in our consciousness. And I think that things come along that irrevocably rupture what things mean, actually. You know, what it means, what youthfulness means, what the idea of being in your 20s and having that sense of being, you know, what's the word, you know, when you
vibrant, excited, happy, hopeful.
It's a very tough time being in your 20s. You know, where nothing can happen to you. Invincible. Thank you. You know, that sense of invincibility became ruptured, you know, so that industrial optimism really got replaced at some time in our lives by the idea of imminent death. Yeah. And you know, and that happens from time to time. I think, you know, when you see the images, the kind of images that you saw today or yesterday of the tsunami in Japan, I mean, for Christ's sake, it's like in a minute, like 8,000 people get just washed away. And, you know, like whether it's natural life or political life or artistic life, I think that sometimes you just have to acknowledge through your art and through the humanity that you try to bring to it, that there are events that break up the conventions and that you're working in, and you have to like incorporate them somehow.
Yes.
I wonder if you would be willing to speak about the specific process of both making your art and what it's like for you to write something. More nitty gritty, because I'm interested about process, and I'm interested to see if there might be a way in which these processes do intersect, overlap in some way.
That's more than it's an overwhelming question.
I understand that. Don't answer.
I remember that when I was a kid, I used to read all those Paris Review interviews, and we'd wait for them to come out, interview with phone. For some reason, they always have said one standard question would be, do you compose directly on the typewriter? But I did compose, even the word composed directly. So now I guess that sort of world is finished. I really don't know how to answer that, honestly. I can just say, get up, I try to get up, and make some coffee for myself. I get into the room, I read my email, I go back to bed, make some more coffee, think I'm going to really start writing, and I look at some books. Then I find a passage in the book that overwhelms me with joy, and I read it to myself. Then I go back and make some more coffee. This takes me to lunch.
Okay, do you feel as if you need to be solitary? I mean, Mr. Bleckner said it's about being solitary. I guess it's always, is it always, you're just saying it's always challenging to get into that place of writing and then to keep it for a sustained period, again, what Mr. Bleckner referenced. So
I'll speak for Ross because I visited his studios. Sometimes there are artists like Roy Lichtenstein had 2 or 3 people working in the studio with him. So we always had music and fun, and people, I used to think, wow, what a life. I mean, these guys really have a great life. They're never alone. They have music, they fool around, they kid, they paint. I remember visiting him, this huge place he works in. He's all by himself. This huge place. I think, my God, where is he? I can't even see him. And there he is, making his paintings. Like, that's it. He just does it. He just goes and stays with it in this kind of way. It's wonderful to watch. If it doesn't see you watching him, he's just the focus, the concentration, the kind of little happiness you could see him exuding. It's extraordinary. But I don't know what the question. I mean, how we do it. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, the medium is different. Except, of course, in your book.
But the creative process isn't really that different, I don't think. I mean, because you're right. When you're writing a book, when you finally can, it's almost like a meditation in a sense. When you could quiet your mind, where you have to quiet your mind to be in a place, I think that concentration, the concentration that you need to finish a project is very self-perpetuating. So in a way, I feel in my own way, although it's a kind of a monastic activity. Whatever goes on, you could go out, you could have fun, you could do, but when it comes down to it, there's a monastic discipline to getting up and going back to work that you just can't become distracted from.
And that might also include if you're experiencing some kind of inner turmoil going through what it is that you're creating. I don't mean working out your issues.
I take an Adderall.
I want to, do we have some other questions? Yes. Did I see a hand up here? No? Other questions? All right, well, I guess it's time for wine and signing of books and buying of books. And so I just want to say thank you so much for coming out of your monastic spaces to be here with us tonight. It's really an honor to have you both.